Mhm.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, it's going to be a great discussion today because it's a live Q&A, so I don't know what the discussion is just yet, but we'll figure it out as the questions come rolling in. I wanted to do stuff about motivation because I learned a couple of new things, so maybe I'll find a way to kind of put it into our dialogue today because I always like to share new knowledge. Again, guys, it's a live Q&A, so my guests today are going to be Joe Pomponio, a retired lieutenant out of Texas. And we also have Russ Hamilton, who's a retired sergeant out of California, San Quentin, which he likes to definitely throw that name out there, San Quentin. It's a good spot to work. And but before we introduce my guests, let me get my sponsors in there, guys, real quick. So my first sponsor is American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to get a degree, seek higher education, please check out American Military University. Guys, they have been with me since day one. Very supportive of what we do in corrections. Also very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So guys, if you get a chance, check out American Military University. We also have my book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, that's now available. Book's doing very well. You know, sold over 300-something copies this month. This year alone. So that's pretty good for this book. And if you guys are interested in getting that book, the link to that is in the description. And guys, when you get a chance, please check out Blue 360 Media. They are the ones that have published or will be publishing my second book. That's the #1 publisher for law enforcement books. I have a link to their website in the description. My last book, which is lessons learned while working in a prison, my journey from officer to admin, is now no longer on Amazon. This publishing company picked it up. They're revamping it, making it look a little bit more better, and then they're going to go ahead and release it onto their website, and then obviously push it through their marketing team. So I'm excited for that. Amazon. You know, when we put together the book, it's just a book. When you open it up, it's just not where it needs to be. So I'm honored that this company was able to pick up the book and then push our message across, especially because here's the cool thing of it all. I'm writing about corrections, but I'm being published by a law enforcement publication. So that means what? That means that they see us as equals. And I totally respect that. And let's see. Let me get who should I do first, Joe or Russ? Well, because Joe is muted, I'll do Russ first. What's up, Russ?
Good evening, Anthony. How are you doing?
Good. Russ, you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Not at all. My name's Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, where I started my career way back in the 80s at San Quentin State Prison. Went on from there to transfer and promote later on, and eventually got myself to a point where I was able to retire, came back, did some more years for California Department of Corrections, went on from that to become a senior correctional officer at a local juvenile lockup here, and now I work for a private company where I do case management work for a local jail and a probation department.
Yes, and Russ, if I may ask, Russ, how's the rehabilitation side going?
So rehabilitation side, provides a whole host of different challenges than that of custody and security. It's one of those things though where if you have really steeped yourself and become a really proficient correctional officer, correctional sergeant, a lot of those traits and a lot of those skills really can transfer over because you're actually just doing the same thing. You're talking, but instead of talking to them about what they need to do and why they need to do it and why they need to do it now, and if they don't, they're going to get locked up or whatever. Instead, we're trying to use more of a carrot approach to try and get them to change the way they run their lives. It's a little bit more of a big picture view in that we look at it from the standpoint of trying to prevent crime by stopping criminals from being criminals.
And I'm on the treatment side now. Went from maximum security prisons to now I most recently been transferred to a treatment center. So it is a different ball game. And I got to give credit outside of custody, always providing that safety and security, because without safety and security, there is no treatment. But you also got to give props for the people that do push the effort to treat the individuals that are incarcerated, the inmates, because it's not easy, guys. I mean, even if you can get them, like what's the horse to water? They don't always want to drink, and there's a finesse behind that. Hey, Joe, it's been a while, Joe. How's life?
Man, it has been a while. It has been it's been crazy, man. It's been rolling fun. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant with the Texas Department of Corrections of almost 30 years, and currently working for our local sheriff's department there in the jail division. Having fun with that, seeing the county side of it of the corrections thing, which is I can tell you is a night and day difference between state corrections, but having a blast with it.
Yeah, and by the way, Joe, you guys been missed. Hey, guys, don't forget, keep on asking the questions because this is about you. We're live now to answer your questions. I wanted to talk about motivation, but the two gentlemen here said, no, let's go live. Let's do something for the audience. And I said, yeah, but I want to talk about motivation. And they said, God, Gangi, do it for your people. So I decided to go live and do it for our people. But thank you guys for convincing me to do that. All right, so I got the comments coming in as we speak. By the way, Sean, I love this comment, guys. Hello, everyone. Anthony, I just finished your inmate manipulation book, and I love it. I'm going to try to see if our facilities in our state will use it in training. You know what's crazy, guys? Just out of curiosity, I mean, outside of the book, whatever it is, the reason why I wrote that book was because there was a gap where I felt that wasn't being trained. I took advantage of what I felt was needed because there's a lot of training that I think as you move through this profession, you look back and say, man, we should have took more on that. And I have a feeling people didn't understand the complexity of the game of inmate manipulation. So it's good to see that people found an interest in that and then now willing to share it, with their peers and coworkers. Thank you, Jojo. Hey, Russ, that's a good first question. All right, guys, I'll ask the first question. What training do you think is not offered that should be, that will better us in this profession? That's a good question.
It's a great question. It kind of just puts me in a position though where I feel like it's difficult to come up with just a one size fits all answer for that. So many different facilities have so many different needs. The jails, although the jails are very similar to what goes on in a state facility, they have a lot of differences too. I think that the one thing that we really all need more of, though, really has to do with that central tenet about inmate manipulation, but not just the manipulation part of it, because we always think about the part of it being, somebody being corrupted or co-opted. No, what we need to understand is we need to understand how they use manipulation on a day-to-day basis to just simply get over. It's not necessarily about, corrupting an officer. It's just a way to get them to, back off of some of the security things, put these officers' minds at ease so that they fail to do a duty. One of the things that I just saw last week in an escape is guys were missing for more than 19 hours because officers simply hadn't gone around and done their counts properly. How did that happen? That happened because inmates put officers at ease. And officers felt, oh, these inmates can be trusted. And so they didn't really bother to count. They just kind of, did the old paper shuffle. So, the whole manipulation thing, it's much deeper than we just think about that worst case scenario about some kind of sexual component or something like that. It can be as simple as putting you off guard in a way that impacts, security in a negative light.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, I think that's the problem why it gets minimized in a lot of academies because or a lot of training because everybody focuses on the outcome. And when they see the outcome, like, well, don't be stupid. Don't bring in a watch or don't bring in a phone or don't bring in drugs. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? It's a lot more than that. There's a process, and the process is really developed based on the vulnerabilities of that individual. And some people are like, well, I'm not vulnerable. It'll never happen to me. But you can't control every situation you face. Russ knows that. Joe knows that there are certain situations that you'll go through that will expose vulnerability. And by the way, manipulation isn't always about, having to bring in something. It's about control. That's all it is. It's about control. I mean, how many times the inmates mess around and have people running around for information that doesn't exist? I mean, it really is about control. And Anthony said something about need in that psychological training, 100%. 100%. I think so. For me, and love to get Joe's answer on what training would be. I just wanted to add one more thought, Joe, is that this is how I protected myself. Granted, you're never going to be able to control every situation you face. I mean, sometimes you're just going to have to figure it out at the moment and then work your way through it. Because situations maybe there's some we could pick up and move forward, but there's some that are going to kind of move you a little bit. But I've always told myself this, after a lieutenant once told me this: never let an inmate pull you out of your prescribed role. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the key. The moment there's some personal connection where the inmate tries to make you forget that you're an officer or forget that they're an inmate and pull on some personal stuff, that's when you start going down the rabbit hole. So I think for me, that has always been a great shield. You know, do I see this person as an inmate so I can go ahead and protect myself so I don't cross into anything undue? And that's why I'm sorry, I agree with the label. Like, everybody has labels that relate to their service they provide. So I'm okay with medical having the label of patient. I'm good with that because that's a professional label for them. I'm good with teachers having a label of student because that's a professional label. And by the way, we're in the background so we could support. If they fail to see the person beyond a student, we're there. We could protect them. But most people have that professional role. Social workers, they got the clients. I get it. Our professional connection is officer inmate. I'm sorry. It is what it is. It's just a reminder. It's not meant to be insulting to the inmates. Just a reminder to us that at the end of the day, when this inmate's trying to connect to us on something personal and mutual, I got to go play back in my head, who am I dealing with? And then when I'm reminded that, oh, that's an inmate, then quickly right off the, oh, I'm an officer. What am I doing? Or I'm, whatever role it is that I'm prescribed to do. Hey, Joe, just out of curiosity, Joe, what's your thoughts on training that's needed in your experience? Personally, where you've been, what training is not always given that should be?
Well, we were talking about manipulation. It comes in many forms, psychological, verbal. I think the biggest amount of training that that's not emphasized is exposing oneself's vulnerabilities. Manipulation starts from, the convict sizing you up and being able to expose your vulnerabilities. And if you don't know what your own vulnerabilities are, you're going to be easily manipulated, So when it comes to training, I like to see more exposure to the manipulation side. Not so much the outcomes, but the how-tos. We all, I'm sure every academy in every state at some point, shows the book of the con games and the how-tos and, but that doesn't mean anything. You can read the words and you can understand the language, but if you don't know yourself, it's going to be an uphill battle.
No, by the way, Joe, you are so spot on, because I always say that when you're coming into this profession, guys, you need to know who you are, because if you don't have a foundation, the inmates can move you anywhere they want to go. That knowing who you are is your rock. You stand on that, and you don't allow anybody to push you even over an inch. But if you're going in, worst things, you're going in and looking to be popular. Every decision you make, well, let me make sure it doesn't get the inmates upset. Who's really running the ship? I have a great question. Oh, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I used to emphasize when I taught our regional academies that, it's a lot like the game of chess. Every time an inmate comes at you, you can either sidestep it, move to another square, but at some point you're going to get knocked off the board if you don't know yourself.
I love that. I like the way you said that too. That's true. All right, guys, I do got some questions coming in. So let me go first with Dante. So I'm going to give Dante, he kind of listened, because at the very beginning I was talking about motivation, and Dante was nice to ask a question about motivation, because Dante is a big fan of Gangi, I'm hoping, and that's why he wanted to go with Gangi's question. So Dante, that is very much appreciated, but it is a good question, by the way. It just gives me a chance to get some new thoughts out. So he goes panel, and what I hear is Gangi, help me. That's what I hear, but it could be just panel. I don't know. What is your opinion of senior staff expectations to motivate, but their focus is more on money and on themselves? Okay, so can I go first, because this is going to be a bit controversial. This is going to be a bit controversial, but I want you to hear me out, okay? So let's start off with this. There are certain things we can control and certain things we can't control, right? Certain things we could control, attitude and effort, right? I want to go to work. I want to feel satisfied. I want to feel fulfilled. I need to have that want come from inside me. That's not going to be something external because I can't control that. Now, granted, most people, you're right. They're motivated by money, very superficial, very extrinsic. And it's like, okay, well, you know what? You're not going to be able to control what the salary is that you're going to get. And to be honest with you, I've seen people making very good salaries that will tell you if they don't like the job, yeah, the money's not good enough. So I know it's more than just the money. Again, yes, if you're struggling, it's one thing. But if you're comfortable, then it's like, okay, yeah, you deserve more. We're working on it because don't get me wrong, guys. You guys deserve as much as you can, as much as you can get. But we're not in a position to have control over that. So I remember talking to somebody recently who was very focused on extrinsic motivation. And I said, listen, you know what's unique about that? That's something that you cannot control. So when I come in, I mention, hey, guys, there's opportunities here. There's different departments you could check out, different laterals, different units that you could explore, maybe seek opportunities. That usually could be a way to kind of get people reinvested. But I learned something recently, and this is not for everyone, just a perspective, but I learned something. And I just want to repeat one last thing. We deserve more money. I'm not denying that. But because we don't have control of that, and I want people to be happy, I want people to enjoy the work that they do because it is work that has tremendous value. So you have a right to want to feel fulfilled in this profession. I noticed that a lot of people will go on those instant results. Like, okay, so money's an instant result. You give me money, it's going to make me happy. Guess what I found out? I found out that people that were intentional with their careers, also that seek opportunities, they got to do a little work to find it. They also become very happy. They've earned, they fight to earn opportunities to maybe look to grow themselves, even if it's in another unit. So I feel that, yeah, but if you can't control the money, then why don't you try to seek other opportunities to be reinvested? And then people are like, well, that takes effort. Yeah, but what do you want to do? Be miserable and leave your happiness or your level of fulfillment in the hands of something external? Or should you make the effort and take control of what it is that you want from this profession, which is some level of fulfillment? And guys, yes, we want good pay, but regardless of what you make, the job is still has value. You got to find it. And then we fight for that stuff. But I just want, in the meantime, I want you guys to know that when something's not in your control, then find something else that is, and focus your happiness and that fulfillment on that. Now, one last thing. As a supervisor, and I think this was the question Sean was getting at, Dante was getting at, was there's a spectrum of motivation, right? So we talked about the intrinsic, right? The intrinsic is a reward, however subjective that could be. I mean, money, I don't know, something tangible, something superficial. Then you have the intrinsic, something that inspires you. There's two things in the middle that people don't realize, that as management, one you want to avoid, or one you may want to work with. And the one that you want to work with is mostly overlooked. The one that you want to avoid is there is motivation. That's what they call introjection, which basically tries to motivate people through shame and guilt, which is not what you want to do as management, obviously, but that is a motivation, but you don't want to do that. But the one motivation that works for management that's overlooked, that's less than inspired, but it can work its way to getting people inspired, is what they called identified motivation. So granted, I may not be inspired to do this work today, but my management has told me it's important. And usually what I do is I identify with the importance of the task. And if I'm, as a management, I can deliver that person some level of autonomy, some level of value and task significance behind the work, there's a good chance that that person can go from this level of identified motivation to internal, intrinsic motivation. So don't overlook the identified. It's going to be hard to find people that are inspired. I get it, especially during these times. But you can motivate people into the value of the work by telling them how important it is, and then watch how the identified motivation could transition into something intrinsic if the person is intentional. The person has to be intentional, because at the end of the day, guys, and I love Russ to comment on Dante's question, is I want an intentional career and not a passive job. And at the end of the day, sometimes it gets a little beaten down a little bit when people play the victimized card instead of being proactive and taking control of this career and being successful. They'll blame everything else. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, but if you would have just done this, because I want people, when you spend 25, 30 years in your career, I don't want you to be miserable for that amount of time. So it's going to take effort, but find the value and find that fulfillment in the service of others, however you have to define that. But Russ, what's your thoughts on Dante's question? Thank you guys for letting me answer that. That was the whole show for today. But, I just wanted to get it across. So I thought there was some good material there. But what do you got, Russ?
What I see him here is talking about senior staff, being the ones who tend to be focused on the money. I think that correctional officers should make, fantastic pay. I believe that, what we do is of that level of value that we should be paid very well. I also think that we need an attractant like that to get the best possible people in there. Having said that, I want people that truly are motivated to try and be the best correctional professional that they can be. One thing that, that's always kind of ruffled me, though, is I do see some senior staff where that's all they care about. They're not worried about, trying to develop, themselves into that, that professional, that consummate professional. They're not worried about, trying to take more classes, to get more training, to try and, help and really, drive the cycle of what's going on inside their institutions. They're just happy to accept the paycheck and do a minimum amount of work rather than polishing themselves. I think it's really important that we never stop growing in this profession. I don't see why anyone would want to be stagnant like that. I want to be able to go to work every day, be appreciated for what I'm doing, and then beyond being appreciated for what I'm doing, be able to, have some of that self-satisfaction that comes from providing something of value. I know that I'm protecting the public. The public's never going to see that I am. I know that I'm, stopping fights and things, and that I'm protecting inmate lives. Probably most of their families don't see that, though. Most of their families are probably told that we're a bunch of knuckle draggers. But I'm okay with that, too, because I know what the truth is. I'm able to see what I do. I'm able to quantify it and understand what I do provide for those families, what I do provide for those inmates. And certainly not last, I know that this is the part that does get seen, is that my brethren, my peers, see how I'm functioning. They see how I am protecting them. They see how I'm going out there and, making sure that we're doing gang suppression, that we're doing contraband interdiction, that we're doing all of those things about, figuring out how to respond to major incidents and things like that. So that part of it is the part that really does motivate. That sense of family, if not a sense of family, at least a sense of camaraderie, a sense of professionalism between us, knowing what we do provide is of true value.
Yeah, and I want to say something before we get to Joe real quick. Traveling Teresa here, Joe caught it too in the comments. Good job, good eye there, Joe, by the way. She's very supportive. She said a very good comment I want to share. And then she let me just share this first. As a mom of an inmate, I get the exposure to vulnerability, but I need you all to also remember they are human and someone's child. And then she says, and by the way, we totally agree. And then she said this other wonderful comment, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm only here to say thank you for all you're doing, what you do. By listening to this, I know that you all are human and the struggle is real. I always get the other side, being as how my child is doing 20. So let's do this, Traveling Teresa. I'm looking for your questions. Ask us any question that you think you need to know about the system. If we could help you out and work through it to help your son, give us the questions. And we have a whole community here that'd be more than willing to help you, help your son do the right thing to make his time a little bit easier. So the panel, I'll be looking for your questions, okay? I want you to know that, Traveling. I'm going to get to the next one. I'm going to look for them. So hopefully you give us some, because this is how we grow too. I was actually going to do a show today on, or a couple of days ago, on what advice would you give inmates to work better with staff. And I think I'm going to re-explore that.
I like that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because I think that that type of question really dovetails a lot into what I'm currently doing with regards to, inmates. I get a lot of my participants, that are, they're either in the jail or they're out on probation. And, it's pretty easy early on to pick out the ones that have a higher degree of likelihood of being successful just based on some of their behavioral characteristics. And if they can't change those base behavioral characteristics, it's almost impossible for me to help them.
Yeah, and hey Joe, again, thank you for pointing that out because I saw you made the comment. But before we go, I have the next question. But Joe, did you want to answer anything from the question before that we just asked? With was it Dante again? It was Dante, right? The motivation.
Yeah, it was Dante regarding the motivation. The motivation starts with yourself, first of all. You should never look to anybody else to motivate you other than you. Secondly, your shift supervisors should be the ones that motivate you to your fullest capability. And we do that by training. We do that by knowledge. We do that by knowing your staff, first off. I mean, you got to know your folks. You can't motivate them if you don't know them. And, each employee has something that they can bring to the table. Everybody has a niche, whether it's, hunting down contraband, doing reports on the computer, doing shakedowns, verbal judo. Everybody has their own niche, regardless of whether they're external if they're externally voiced or internally voiced. Either way, everybody has a niche they're good at. And, our jobs as supervisors is to motivate them to use that niche. We find it, we help them cultivate it. We give them the knowledge and the power. Most employees just want a voice and a voice and the capability of making the decision in their duties and what they do. And, a good supervisor or a good leader will allow them to make those decisions within just, justifiable lanes. You definitely don't want to make them supervisory decisions, but you want them to have that voice and that knowledge and the capability of making a decision within their daily, without it being dictated to them. So, it's our job to cultivate them, and it's their job to have the motivation to be there, number one. And, for us to cultivate that's our responsibility, regardless of what those above us think or how they act or what they want to do. It's our job ultimately to keep the morale up and keep our staff knowledgeable. That's all they want. They just want to be in the loop. They want to know why we do what we do and the decisions that we make. It doesn't hurt to explain it to them. It doesn't hurt to break it down to them. Once you do it, they tend to understand it and they tend to swallow it a little bit better versus somebody that comes into a shift briefing and just totally berates them. I never could stand that. I always used to tell my sergeants to bitch up, not bitch down. If you got something to gripe about it to me. Don't gripe about it to them. If it's something that they did, let me handle it. I'll go in. We'll break it down to them.
Yeah, and I love what Alicia said. Total agreement with you, Joe. Said some staff want advancement, other time off with the family, more variability than I expected prior to managing. I want to welcome somebody that just came onto the channel real quick. Andromeda. Thank you all for the work you do. I'm not a correctional officer. I found this channel from YouTube recommendations since I watch a few police officer channels and I found it interesting. So thank you. I mean, that's the key. Come into this channel with a sense of curiosity and not judgment. That's pretty awesome. And he's already connecting with the community, which is even awesome. Finished my background and interview. Do you have any tips for CVSA polygraph? Russ, you got that? Hey, Russ,
I got that one.
Hey, Russ, do me a favor. Can you move that cup of urine?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see you're well hydrated.
Yeah, what is that?
He's drinking.
No, I've got to, man. I'm in training right now. You know this. So let's talk a little bit about what he's got going on there, right? The VSA is voice stress analysis. It's really, really similar to voodoo. The only thing that I can tell you is that this is stuff, in my opinion. All right, this is strictly my opinion, and I'll stick with it. Every bit that I know about human nature and everything else is that the polygraph, which the traditional one, and this new voice stress analysis is their chance to get you off their game and try and open you up in a way to see if they can find something to use against you. All right. For the most part, when we talk about a traditional polygraph, Can it be used to investigate a specific crime with a specific suspect? Yes. Can you go on a fishing expedition with it and hope that you find out something in somebody's past? No. So, like I say, it's voodoo. The best thing I can tell you is just be honest and go in there and answer every question, and know that it's beyond the scope of your control of doing anything over it, because whoever the tea leaf reader is, that's what you're stuck with. All right. I know a lot of people that have different views other than mine, but I say this based on having helped dozens, if not hundreds of people prepare for this kind of thing. And I wish that they would do something more proactive rather than voodoo polygraph and voice stress analysis.
Yeah, I want to add something. Maybe Joe will too. I want to add something too. I like what Russ said. I just want to piggyback on it. The fact that you're having it done is also nerve-wracking. So you have to make sure that you're kind of calm going in there. I mean, they're going to ask you very simple questions at first to develop a baseline. But the key is, as long as you're consistent and honest, there's no reason to ever be nervous about anything. Take a second. They may ask you the same question multiple ways, which also becomes a bit confusing. So if you don't know the question, or if it sounds like you already answered that, hey, can you rephrase that? I think I've answered that before. Just make sure the key thing here is kind of very similar to piggyback off what Russ said, is that it's consistency. I mean, literally, I can't stress it enough. It's consistency. If you want to pass that test, be consistent. Be consistent. Because listen, to be honest with you, we've all done foolish shit. How that test screws you over is when you hide it. That's because now I can't trust you. Remember that. We could work with something, but I can't work with dishonesty. And that thing is meant to trigger on dishonesty. So if you're consistent and you made a few errors in your past, take onus to it. Don't worry about judgment, because either way, if you tell the truth, you have a better chance of getting it than lying and then adding that to it. So just tell the truth, let the chips fall where they may. That's all. That's my advice. I think that's spot on. Oh, bye. She didn't say bye, Joe. She didn't say bye.
She typed a text on her phone to ask me to move the camera because she didn't want to be seen in her PJs.
Oh, okay. Is she coming back? We kind of enjoyed her company.
Who knows?
All right. Well, Joe, you have any question about any advice on that?
No, I mean, when it comes to any interview, the biggest thing is, like you said, number one, consistency. Number two, be yourself. Don't be something that you're not. Don't hide anything. When you hide things, that's when they start digging deeper, looking for more bones. Be yourself, be truthful, be honest, and don't go in there pretending to be something that you're not. Just be consistent.
Yeah, I got a question for Texas, Joe. I got to start moving back up because there's a lot of questions that came my way. I do the tag. James Phillips. Good evening, gentlemen. I work for MTC in Texas just over a year. TDCJ has won the contract for our facility. No one has answers about my employment status. Am I going to have a job? Do I reapply? I don't know.
Yeah, and I sent him a question back in the chat regarding that. MTC is a private contracted facility. MTC is kind of they do the rehabilitation side. They run our ISF, or intermediate sanction facilities. They do all our Project Rio and rehab programs before they go back into the parole status. So as far as his facility, if he's working for MTC, I've never seen where TDCJ has taken over a facility, and I'm wondering if maybe there's another private contract that may be taking it. So that's, I don't know. I need a little more information from him regarding that.
All right. So James, if you get a chance, ask and just,
let me tell you what I'll do is I'm going to put my email address up, Anthony, if you want to put it up there, and
he put it in the comment. I'll put it up there from now.
Yeah. Appreciate he can email me this way. I can get some more.
What is MTC? Metropolitan? Is that what it is?
No, something training, something training corporation. There's several private contracts in Texas. You got CEC out of Mississippi, you got MTC, you got Geo, Wackenhut. It's just another private facility that private contract that that takes over some of the facilities. MTC primarily right now, though, at most facilities is doing is doing what they call the intermediate sanction facility, where they do the rehab and the quest for manhood and that kind of stuff. They definitely do things. Or Asset Management Training Corporation.
Well, Joe, where's your email? Because I didn't get it.
It should have come up. It popped up on the YouTube chat.
Where is it? I don't see it.
Unless I'm getting YouTube censored.
No, because I think James needs it. I don't see you coming off. Did one of the?
No, I just put it back in again. So
do you see it on yours, Russ?
I'm looking for it. Hold on.
I just put it in right after James's comment for Management Training Corporation.
I don't know why I'm not getting it. It's not showing up on mine. Oh wait, no, I don't see it either. That is James Phillips. Hey Joe, what is it? I'll just type it up now. What is it?
Okay, it's K.
Okay.
The number 5.
5.
And the letters J, E, P.
All right.
The number 3.
All right.
At gmail.com.
All right, Joe, I'm going to be honest with you, Joe. I'm going to put it in now, but you gave it to me one letter at a fucking time, man. That was ridiculous.
Well, I mean, you're in New York.
Trust me, we're up to 7.
A little slower for y'all.
Listen, you could trust me up to 7 numbers. I can memorize that. You ever get what is it? Was it Kevin James or whatever the show where they give the phone numbers outside of the normal dot 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 dot? He breaks the rhythm. It's like, oh, I don't know what the hell the number is. Okay, there we go. I got it. Okay. Thanks, Alicia. Alicia always has our back. So she's going to make sure. Yeah, James, if you want, maybe if you could think of it, be more specific if you want, or you could email Joe. He'll help you out. So we got a few more questions coming in, guys. And again, keep them coming. I was going to roll back up to the ones at the beginning. Chris said, how do you know you passed the polygraph? It's been like a week. I mean, they tell you. I mean, so the only problem, and Russ Joe comment on this, but bear with me. The only problem sometimes is that you don't. Sad thing about a lot of agencies, even when you work in an agency, you don't get the phone call of what you've done wrong in order to approve. Some places will to keep morale going and to keep people motivated, but sometimes they don't tell you, which is foolish. And the reason why sometimes they don't is because some of them think that by not telling you that you did something wrong, that they won't get sued, because a lot of people, once they find out what they did wrong, then they turn it into a lawsuit. So some agencies will avoid that. That's why we tend not to, call people back up and tell them they didn't get the job. We just tell them, you'll know in 2 weeks. It doesn't mean that, I'm going to call you in 2 weeks. It means that you haven't gotten a phone call. But I think for the polygraph, it depends, but it could take up. I mean, I've seen it, 4 to 6 weeks sometimes, depending on how long the hiring process is. But Russ, it doesn't come back right away, correct? Even though they could probably read it immediately, you don't get those results back for weeks.
Well, it depends on what their format of what they're doing is. Some places just want, the baseline polygraph or the VSA, and some want it scored out all the way. I don't really understand what the difference is, but maybe it's that, they're trying to keep keep being able to use that tool. And I don't know why they want to use it, because it's a piss poor tool. Believe me, but it could just be that they want it scored all the way out.
Yeah. All right. So I got a good question from. Let me get Traveling Teresa, and then I'm going to go back and get Dante, and I'm going to get Andromeda. So she has no question. My kid's been doing life on the installment plan. This 20 may not change him, and I have my doubts, but I just want all of you to know I'm grateful and thankful. Well, Traveling, listen, if you have any questions, if we can help, hit me up on the channel. Email. My email is public email. I'll put it out here now in case you need it. Alicia, she's on the channel. She's a good resource as well. She does have direct contact to me. So if you want to reach out to her, Alicia's always helping everybody. So that's just who she is. So she has direct contact with me, but I do check my emails a lot. So if something comes up, I will tell you, and I know you want, I will show you the right way to do things, not the right way, and not the way to manipulate the system. I will not do that, which I'm sure that's not what you want. You want the right way. The only advice I would give you, if I can, is before you make judgment on an action that you believe we did, when you speak to administration, you could say, like, I'm not saying this happened, but, sometimes an inmate may tell the family something, and then the family calls administration 100% sure that this happened because that's what their son said or their daughter said. And then they find out later on that didn't happen. So if you feel something has happened, call administration and say, listen, my son notified me about this. I don't know if that happened or not. Are you able to look into the information, as opposed to just going in and making the accusation without giving administration a chance to really look in and see what happened? I mean, that's one of our most frustrating things. So again, be objective at first. I know what your loved one, and by all means, but I will tell you, if there's something wrong, they'll figure it out, and they better do the right thing and hold people responsible. Yeah, we are, Alicia, but you're also a great help too. I just wanted to say thank you. All right, let me get to Dante's question real quick, and then I want to get to Andromeda. Tier Talk panel. As for motivation, what is your take on incoming rookies being warned of repercussions for misconduct, but still do it after being warned? Thanks. So let's go with Joe first, then Russ, if that's okay. Joe hasn't gone first yet.
Yeah, I want to answer Dante's question, then make a brief response to Teresa as well. As far as Dante, we pound during the training academy, we pound all this stuff into their heads about what they're not supposed to do. We're repetitive, in delivering that message. When they come in as rookies, a lot of it's got to do with the individual. Some people receive it well, some people don't receive it well. All you can really do is, sit them down, have that one-on-one, find out why is it, they keep making these mistakes, or why are they intentionally doing what they're doing, and from there, you give them the speech, and, all you can do from that point is start going through your progressive steps until they either get the picture that they're not supposed to be doing, they can't do it, and they won't do it, or, everybody has a motivating factor as to why they do what they do. The first thing I try to do is try to get to the bottom of, to the heart of why they're doing it. From there, it's really, it's a progressive thing from that point. You can only warn somebody so many times, especially if they're making a mistake that could cause somebody else to get hurt, or, assaulted, or, it could be a staff member or an offender that they endanger by doing what they're doing. Sometimes you have to take the direct approach with them, and it is what it is.
I like that.
I do want to say to Teresa, she made the comment about her son, doing 20 on the, doing time on the installment plan, and that he may or may not change. And I want to stress one thing to her and to all the parents who have kids that are incarcerated, is you can't make them change. As much as you want to, you cannot, until they're ready to change in their heart and change their ways and change their actions. All you can do is support them. That's all you can do is support them, so that you shouldn't harbor any guilt about your loved ones being incarcerated, because you didn't make that choice. They did. You gave them all the knowledge growing up. You gave them all the support. You gave them all the morals and everything that a parent's supposed to do, but they made that choice anyway. And until someone's ready to change themselves, nobody else can change them. So, I just wanted to stress that to all the parents that do have kids out there, and like Anthony said, there's always two sides of a story.
Yeah.
A lot of the times, they'll call and say so-and-so did this, so-and-so did that. And then, when we look at the video evidence, it's something totally different. So, don't always take everything as gospel. There's two sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle is the truth.
And Teresa, I'm not saying this is the case for you, by the way, but I want to mention also something, kind of piggyback on what Joe just said, is the fact that sometimes they'll utilize guilt, and they'll manipulate the hell out of you based on that guilt. So if you always feel responsible for the negative things that they're doing, and that responsibility removes accountability from them and puts guilt back onto you, watch how they take advantage of that. I've seen it. So I think the first step into protecting yourself is putting the accountability where it needs to be, separating the responsibility from their actions, putting it back on them, and then it opens up a window for you to have a better, more disciplined relationship with them. Yes, and I said discipline because that's what it needs to be. All right, so let's do this. I wanted Russ's thoughts on that question about the repercussion for the rookie. Joe, Russ, do you remember the question? Or want me to?
Yeah, I remember it, and this is one of the things I harken back to. Unfortunately, time after time, sometimes is that when we're training these people, when we're bringing them on board, doing the things that we do, there is nothing more important in what we do than the culture that we've instilled in each and every institution. You're going to have good cultures, you're going to have bad cultures. When we have a good culture, it's evident when we find out things like this, where we have rookies that are messing up, we need to bring them back into the fold. The way that we do that is we make sure that our philosophy of what we're doing at that institution is spot on. And by that, I mean, we have to give them the main tool that we've got to be able to stay focused, which is where our oath lies. We all get up there and, we swear that oath to, uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, uphold and defend the Constitution, usually also of our particular state. And that's where our allegiance lies. And so if we've got a rookie that's acting out of pocket and just doing things that do not adhere to upholding that Constitution and ensuring that, not only do we go out there and ensure that that the rights of the average citizen of our population, of the public out there, as it were, not only are their rights being protected, but whether we like it or not, we have to protect the rights of those inmates as well. And so a person that doesn't hold that as dear in their heart, either we have to find a way to instill that in them, or we have to, unfortunately, sometimes let them go. And that's why I think it's so important that we have quality people that can understand that principle about where our allegiances lie. Because if our allegiances are skewed, we're always going to be willing to act out of pocket and do things that are antithetical toward our oath and to our badge. That badge really symbolizes that oath, and that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and guys, obviously there's different levels of misconduct. So I think there are certain things where, because you said misconduct, so I automatically look at misconduct as beyond negligence. I look at misconduct as outright breaking that oath, the trust. So for me, I'm very weary of trust. Once it's broken, like I get there's competence. So I trust someone to be competent. I can work with that. I can cultivate. That's my part. I'll share in some level of building them up. But then there's the integrity part. And I think that once I feel a certain way about someone's integrity, that's a whole different ball game. And at that point with that, I mean, if I got to do it, I'm sorry, I have no problem reporting it, because for me, you chose a side. So, I'm going to play my side now too, because if you let that go in for too long, you never know what's developing. So again, there's the trust and the competence. I'll work with you. Let's do it together, guys. Come on, we'll work together. We'll make it happen. Let's get you better. But the trust and integrity, oof, that's tough. And then Andromeda asked the question, what's the average number of use of force incidents in a typical week, like using non-lethals or doing takedowns or submission holds? So, well, you know what, Russ, this is Russ thing. That's going to vary prison to prison or jail to jail. But Russ, maybe there's a way we could do a generalized answer for our gentleman. And I got to go upstairs for a second, so I'll be right back while you do it.
I'll grab a hold of this. So that's a really difficult question to answer, because it changes from institution to institution, and it changes from individual officer to individual officer. As for myself, I was one of those people who always put myself out there, tip of the spear, right? Day in, day out, I'm going to find the dope. I'm going to find the weapon. I'm going to find, whatever type of felony is going down. I'm going to, be investigating the gang members. I'm going to be validating their tattoos. And so on a person that's out there, in different units, even sometimes, you can just be having that stuff come your way. There's also the occasional officer out there who's the fire starter, who just, they're out there, they're careless with their mouth, they're careless with their intentions, and they only have that one trick pony attitude where they're not able to achieve balance and find ways to talk to inmates. Make no mistake, there is a time and place to be hard as nails with inmates, and those times are going to be coming along. You don't need to seek them out, right? So that's what happens when we're talking about these use of force incidents. Sometimes things will just be in a real state of disarray with gangs fighting each other. You start ending up responding to 2 or 3 little riots a week, and so it's very hard to quantify. How much force are we using? How many uses of forces have I done? In a particular week or a particular month. Some places are a lot slower, so it's really difficult to say. But I will say that more active institutions are going to have more use of force, more active officers. And I'm talking about officers acting in the good way. They are out there, forcing the issues, as it were, and helping to, maintain safety and security. Inmates don't like that. And so sometimes those things are going to go out of hand in that. So I had, just to relate something to you, I had this one particular yard that I used to work as an officer, and it was the West Block yard at San Quentin, as a matter of fact. And the investigations lieutenant, he was out there one day, and he says, "Man, why does every incident have your name on it?" And I said, "Have you seen where they put me every single day? The first thing that they do is they put me in the chow hall, and I have to seat the extended term inmates. Those are the guys that are doing 25 to life. The second thing that I do is I have to seat the Cat J inmates. Those are the guys that are crazy. And then the third thing that I do is I come out here on this yard that's the size of 3 basketball courts, and it has 450 inmates on it. What do you think is going to happen? You guys put me at the tip of the spear, and I'm kind of that guy anyway. It's what's going to happen." Having said that, I think that we do have to take stock and account for what our actions are. We do want to try and achieve the goal of running an institution with the least amount of force possible. But that doesn't mean that we can run away from our responsibilities, because sooner or later our responsibilities are going to require us to use that force. And I hope that wasn't too rambling.
No, Russ, I wanted to add something. So obviously juveniles, it's a lot different because of they're being protected, obviously. But I like what the gentleman said. A lot of people don't realize this, so I want to bring up a comment from Spade. These juveniles are dangerous, by the way. And when I worked juveniles, I was doing 2 use of force of days for just refusal to house or relocating to our SEG. I think most of the day was 6. Russ, you were with juveniles briefly too, right? You're using force a lot, right?
Yeah, fortunately, the unit that I was in, we were a very small facility. We were one of the smallest facilities in California, as a matter of fact. So our uses of force were more sporadic. But the problem with the kids is they're just overly emotional, and so what happens a lot of times is they want to lash out, and so you can go sometimes for a while and not use force, and then all of a sudden you got 2 or 3 in one day. And the nature and the flavor of the whole institution can seemingly change overnight. So my hat's off to anyone doing that juvenile thing. I took my turn in the barrel doing it, and I'll tell you, it was at times a very satisfying type of thing, because I think that I did help some juveniles, but there were other times that it was heartbreaking, because some of them are not salvageable. And it really makes you think, what is society going to be faced with when this guy or gal turns into an adult?
Yeah, and Joe, what's your thoughts on the use of force?
Well, uses of forces are defined by the culture of your unit, and every unit's, the culture is different, from minimum to maximum. I've been on some minimum units where the culture was so bad we were having them quite frequently, more frequently than we should have. And I've been on max units where we would have maybe one a week. So it's all defined by the culture of your unit, and the culture of your unit is based on the communication between your staff members and the offender population. Every unit, and it's not just, inside the prisons, every, broad spectrum of employment has, the fire starters, the ones that always wire shit up just because they can. Those are the kind of people that you want to, those are the people you want to kind of curtail, because those are dangerous individuals to have. But as far as uses of forces, I in my 30 years, I can honestly say I can probably count on four hands how many uses of forces that I personally have had to have. If I had to average it, it'd probably average less than one a year, when you put them all together. A lot
and Joe, when we're talking about use of force, we're also talking about use of force on resistant inmates, not use of force through routine stuff.
Right. Yeah. In Texas, it's not considered a use of force unless, they resist. You can put one in handcuffs to kind of de-escalate a situation, whether it's a fight or a verbal altercation. It's not considered a use of force. If you're doing a routine escort, it's not considered a use of force unless they pull away from you. And those were very seldom, unless, an offender was just so amped up behind a situation that, he didn't want to calm down. But, a lot of it depends on the culture of your facility, and that's defined by the staff and the offender population. And, how well, communication is key to de-escalating and resolving and dissolving and not having uses of forces. And that's the common goal. If you get into this job just because you're looking to slam one, then you need to find the exit door, because you're a fire starter, and we don't need that. I've never been the type of individual to go looking for a use of force. If one had to be had or one hopped up on me, then, by all means, I'm willing to dance. But just to come in and go look for one just because you're bored or just because you can, that's not what we're looking for. That's not our goal.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, so for some states, I mean, you're right. Use of force was really focused on those that are being resistant, but technically, even an escort may require some level of use of force, even with an inmate that is moving from A to B compliantly. I mean, the key is it's a circle, sort of. It used to be a spectrum. Now they do a circle. Two great questions coming from. So first, let's do Anthony, and then I want to do Alicia. So Anthony said, "What new technology?" And I think Anthony comes from Australia. What new technology, techniques, or education should or could be implemented, if any, to be a step or more ahead of belligerent prisoners in prisons, jail for years to come? So let's go with Russ first, then Joe, and then I'll hop on.
Yeah, I think one of the things that that I was really heartened to see during my career is that we adopted the use of every officer having a baton. Later we had where every officer was issued pepper spray. After that, we got to where every officer had a vest. After we did that, we started getting more into being able to do the use of force, incident response stuff, and we started decentralizing where a lot of our munitions and stuff were stored, so that during riots and stuff we could easily access lots of different equipment, everything from grenades to launched munitions like baton rounds with the 5 wooden blocks, CS gas, CN gas, OC dispersion. And as those things started to make it onto the line, we were able to more quickly get control over our units when we would have an incident. We didn't have to wait for anybody. Every officer out there had at least 2 chemical grenades on them. They had sometimes multiple MK9s. They had radio, the vest. the baton, everything else. Everybody became a force multiplier, and I think that really helped take a lot of the heat out of a lot of the institutions, and that we were able to, respond to things so quickly and, with such, precision, and we had all the tools that we needed to do, and we weren't going to end up in these protracted incidents that, just lasted and went on and on forever. And I think that, that's the California's credit. And I've seen more and more of that start to happen across the United States. And so I think that that's really where we have to be. If we can't control the yards and the pens, the facilities as a whole, we can't do anything about rehabilitation or anything else to begin with. So I'm really hoping that, more people start adopting that idea about each and every officer being a force multiplier and giving everyone access to all of the equipment we need.
Yeah, and I want to add something on that because I do agree with Russ, but I want to add something from a management's perspective or where the liability could be, because I agree with Russ 100% that that's something that should definitely always, the force multiplier. I love that. Of course, there's a lot of people that are going to be like, well, there's tremendous liability just giving everybody that type of ammo. That's why I want to tell people, when you're given the trust to be those force multipliers, don't fuck around. Those aren't toys. Don't play around, because the moment they feel you can't be trusted and there's going to be a liability, sometimes they don't just take it away from the person that fucked around. They take it away from the whole staff. We used to have people back in the day spraying each other in the face. Oh, let's have fun. We'll pepper spray each other, which whatever. And then next thing you know, word gets around, or you misuse it on an inmate because you want to mess around. And who did that? Anthony. Okay, well, Anthony, guess what? Because of your actions and you represent the correctional officers at this facility, we can't trust any correctional officer now. So we want all the pepper spray taken away from everybody because they misused the tool. And then we'll think about giving it back to everybody after you've gone through some serious retraining. So just be careful when you're given that level of responsibility. Do not mess around, because at any moment, because it takes a lot to get what Russ is saying. That force multiplier, that's something that literally takes a lot of time to develop. There's got to be trust in the system that's being implemented in, and then that kind of motivates things to move forward. But mess up once, and watch how fast they take all those tools back, because those tools are great to prevent, or great to, kind of, if there's someone that's not compliant, it's a good use of force, not to hurt somebody, but to kind of de-escalate. But the moment you misuse that the wrong way and it becomes punitive, or you kill somebody because you're messing around, you destroy it for everyone. Trust me. And one last thing on that. It's kind of messed up because my safety depends on the tools that I'm trusted with. And because, let's say Joe messed up, Joe, because of you, I'm no longer safe. But you know how they usually look at it? It's not because of Joe. It's because of management. No. Management didn't come in that day to take it away. Joe fucked up. Now there's a problem with trust in everyone who wears the uniform, because when Joe fucked up, he was wearing the uniform. So now the liability for the department is we can't trust anyone with that. So they'll go after management, but it's like, hey, you know what? Let's talk to Joe first, because Joe shouldn't have done that. Hey, Joe, any thoughts on that question from Anthony? Want me to repost it, or do you remember it?
No, I remember it. Being I started when I did, there wasn't much technology back then. You had a Motorola radio that was about 1.5 feet long when you add the battery pack to it, and it beat you half to death when you responded to something. Technology, I don't know, for me, and this is just my personal opinion, technology is not always the answer to everything. And I'll give you an example. Here in Texas, they're starting to issue out tablets to the offender population, and they've already found a way to drain the battery acid out of these tablets and use it to make meth in the penitentiary. So technology to me is not always a good thing. Anything that they can devise and come up with that'll keep the staff and the offenders safe, I'm good for. It's just a matter of, everything that we devise and everything that we come up with, and I'm sure you guys will agree with me. Everything that comes down the pike is a result of something that happened. It's always reactive instead of proactive, and that's just the way it's been, and that's the way it's always going to be. Having and I'll put it. We have these tablets at the county jails, that we use for security checks and for our visuals on suicidals or separated offenders from the population. And it was a great concept in theory. My personal opinion, it was piss poorly planned, because we can never keep them on because the battery drains before you have a chance to do your checks. So to me, nothing beats the old way of walking the halls and looking in cells. And that's just the way I feel about it. Like I say, that's just personal opinion. And the other thing I disagree with is holding the whole group responsible for the action of one. Damn that. Deal with that one. The one that did something so foolish that the upper management is considering taking our safety tools away from everybody else. I don't agree with holding the whole responsible for the actions of one.
Right.
Get
so, that's spot on, Joe. By the way, so I agree. I want to, because you made a good point. But I want you to know, when it comes to that, the reason why sometimes they do it is because that one, and you're right, by the way, collective punishment doesn't work. It doesn't work for staff, doesn't work for inmates. I agree 100%. So we're 100% in agreement. But as I said, the reason why they do that is because that one officer just destroyed, because remember, they look at things on the outside as general. At the end of the day, I don't know Joe, but I know Joe was a correctional officer. So at that point, guess what Joe just did to all the other correctional officers? He just screwed them. So you're right. The management needs to go back and then tell those people that, hey, yo, we took care of that. That person is suspended or whatever it is. But usually what happens is now we're in this liability, and the quickest way they figure they'll settle it is to take the shit away from everyone. And that instant reaction is bullshit. I agree.
I understand, but for me, it's more projecting the fact that you're perpetrating this vision to everybody else that you don't trust them now because of the actions of one.
Right.
And as far as telling them that we're going to hold off on this until we have the training. The training should have been implemented before the tools were even brought out. And we had that happen in Texas back in the early 90s. We had these shields. They look like riot shields, except they're concave. Instead of them wrapping to you, they wrap around you. Well, they were taser shields. And, they were doing training one night, and one guy thought it'd be funny. And some of our units down there are what we call red brick. These are old units with iron bars that were erected back in the late 1890s to the early 1900s. And he thought it'd be funny to put that taser shield up on the bar and shock the hell out of one of his employees, being funny. And, the employee shrugged it off. He goes back down to his desk of assignment, starts doing his paperwork, and has a massive heart attack, dies right there. Yeah. So what happens? They took the taser shields away statewide. At that time, we had 117 units.
But can you understand? Right. But, okay. So, right. So, yeah. But do you understand?
Which I understand the knee-jerk reaction. Okay, well, let's get them all out of service until we can get some adequate training out. I do. I understand that need because it's a liability issue.
Yeah, because again, what's going to happen here is so this is maybe we could do a topic on this on itself, but I want to comment because I do agree with Joe, and I'm sure Russ would agree too, that there's collective punishment's messed up because it only disenfranchises people that are actually doing their job correctly, but sad to say is that when there's a fuck up, the instant reaction is going to be that, because, God forbid you don't commit to something and it happens again. Because think about this, Joe, hear me out, guys. And just from a management perspective, I want to throw out a perspective that's probably not out there. So be fair, it's not to pass judgment, just to be fair and a perspective that most people may not know. And I would love to get your thoughts on this before we go to Alicia's question. Let's say I'm the on-call, right? I'm the administrator running the shift, and something happens, a misuse of I'm not going to say OC because I mean, all right, you spray somebody, we can handle that individually. It's got to be the highest end of liability. Like I like what you just said now, the shield. That's a big thing. If I was on call when that happened, I have to automatically, the first thing that's going to be questioned after something like that happens is what did the person in charge do? So most likely the administrator is probably not even making the call. It's going to be sent. They're going to want that shit out immediately. We'll figure it all out later. I want that out now because here's the fear of what just happened. What just happened is if they didn't commit that, and let's say something does happen, whatever it is, the question is, because this happened, this person got electrocuted, can you trust right now 100% that it's not going to happen again? And if you cannot give them that 100%, which I know we really never really could, but at this point you better be able to, you got a problem. So having said that, because nothing's really ever 100%, you alleviate that obstacle. But then Joe did say something that complements this. You start building the trust again. I got to get these guys retrained. There's some accountability here. Joe is gone. In the process, I'm retraining everybody because that's, guys, real quick. Once a fuck up like this happens, the department itself has to rebuild trust in what's being issued. And that's not going to be overnight. That's going to take time. So they're immediately going to, because trust is still being rebuilt, they're going to get rid of everything that has a doubt to it. Whatever has a doubt connect to it, sorry guys, liability. But once they build back the trust, they slowly bring it back in again. But you mess up again, it's going to happen again only because of the amount of liability that connects to something of that caliber being misused, because it's not that easy to bring those things into a prison for us as protection if it's being used as a game or if it's being used to hurt, So again, there's liability connected to that. Hey, Russ, you want to touch on that? Or you want to touch on Alicia's question?
No, what's Alicia got there?
Alicia's, what is something you wish new staff knew coming in that somehow gets overlooked?
Okay, the thing that I always like to think about with regards to that is how long it felt for me to really be able to take on the full mantle of what my powers as an officer were, in order to be able to actually be truly effective out there on the line. We're imbued with a lot of real true power out there. We have the ability to for good or bad, whichever way you want to look at it, to take a life if necessary. We have the ability to go out there and interdict drugs and to charge people, with possession of weapons, whatever it is. And I think that sometimes we're not good about establishing for those people new coming in as to just what they can do with their whole career and how they can get out there and be a true force for good out there, amongst these inmates, and being able to make their whole facility a safer place. I wish that more of them would take on that responsibility of being a true impact player and really carrying the day and getting in there and working things. It took me a while to start picking that up and understanding what I was truly capable of, because there were a lot of people holding me back that just wanted to, hey, let's do our 8 and hit the gate and not have any fun, but bitch about administration and complain about everything. And you get thrown in with the wrong crowd, the wrong haters and stuff, and you don't really see how truly great this job can be. I won't tell you that I enjoyed every single thing about it, because there were some really, really bad things that happened to me. But all in all, I loved my job and I loved doing it. And that's why I continue to do what I do now.
Yeah, and long after he's retired, too, he's gotten back into the profession. Let's see. Yeah, he does, Joe. Dante does have phenomenal questions. He's on point today. Let me get his. Well, let me just see, because There's some more questions coming in right now as we speak. So let's see. Let's do one more for Anthony, because Anthony just came up, and then there's one more for Andromeda. So Anthony says, if a jail burns, where should the prisoners go? Into another unit or another jail, bearing in mind all manners of checks would need to be conducted. I mean, that's something, I mean, it depends on the layout of the facility. It depends on how many units. Most of the time, if there is a fire, it's like I said, it's a smaller facility. I mean, it depends on what area is affected too. I mean, you try to bring the inmates, if you can, into the yard, unless that area is blocked. If there's a mess hall, I mean, it really.
In California Department of Corrections, every single facility that we have a plan for every single thing that could possibly occur. Yeah. Everything from war to fires to gas attacks to terrorist attacks. And so all of those things written into our operational manual, we would know exactly what was going on. If we lost part of a unit, and we've had it happen before, we've had dorms burned down because they weren't made out of cinder block and stuff, and had riots occur, and we just start going into to that emergency plan. Where are we going to pull from? Where are the buses going to come from? Who's going to drive them? All of that is already pre-planned. And so that takes a whole lot of weight off of your plate. There's very little in corrections that we don't have some type of plan, guideline, or contingency set up for.
Yeah, and to answer that question that you asked, I mean, it's tough because the layout, what area is affected, But
we have mutual aid and stuff too. It's all taken care of. We know where we're sending a mass number of prisoners if necessary. I mean, everything, like we even had, stuff for earthquakes and tidal waves and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Dante had a question about becoming a sergeant that I can't seem to find. It was a good question.
I got it in front of me.
All right. Can you, I'll
read it out for you. It says, Tier Talk panel, being the three of you are seasoned vets, and I'm soon to be a sergeant, what is your take on motivating staff when noticing complacency being imminent in them? Thank you.
All right, so let's do Russ, Joe, because I know Russ loves complacency, so I have to let him go first, and I'll get Joe second, and I'll cut in third.
So complacency, has its roots in a couple of different things. One of which is the complacency of routine. Sometimes we go out there and we do the same things over and over and over again, and we start to put ourselves into a position where we're blind to what can actually occur. That's where we need to really get back and start thinking about what we can do as far as a threat assessment, say on the way that we run breakfast or something like that. Getting your people involved in doing tasks like that. Hey, bring me an idea for making breakfast safer. What can we do? Are there locks that we can put in place? Can we change the the layout of the steam table? What can we do? We had years ago at one facility that I worked at, we had them, they'd covered parts of the window with some mesh, and we had them go up there and they put in some little ports so we could get officers up there on that roof line and be able to flood the interior of that chow hall with chemical munitions if need be. So having your people bring forth good, solid ideas that you can put on paper and bring forth is one great way to limit that complacency, because it forces them to start to think about the things that could happen. And so when we're thinking about, doing something with regards to critical thinking, not what anything could happen. I mean, we could have an alien invasion, but what's the most probable bad thing that could occur? And how can we do something to fix that? And if you just look at the headlines from a week ago, just look at what happens with, all of these bad paper counts that people are doing, not counting real bodies there, and guys are gone for 19 hours. And look at what happened in Texas. I think it was last year. A guy got out of a bus because Well, we'll go into all of the things that may have happened there. But he got out of that bus and he went and killed a family of 5.
Yeah.
Maybe if somebody had been doing a little bit more critical thinking, a little bit of threat assessment, what would happen if an inmate did X, Y, and Z on one of our buses? Maybe we could have stopped something like that. So get them involved, make them vested in the outcomes, make them, buy into your idea about how can we be a better unit overall, and then find the people that have some little hidden talent. Maybe you have a guy that's really good at, identifying who the gangbangers are, and then have that guy, teach a little class about doing validation. And I don't know what your particular, validation, standards or whatever might be, but then have someone do something on, contraband and searches and all of the little things that we do, and make them have an interest in making sure that it's done right. Because everybody's got a talent, but make those people that have little talents become better balanced by giving them more tools in their tool belt and more skill sets that they can help spread around.
Yeah, and remember too, guys, as a supervisor, complacency, you do your best to prevent it. You walk away, and it's going to happen again and again. It's not something that it stops. The facility or people just in general fall back to complacency. It's like the norm. So you as a supervisor, you got to keep them on your toes, because if you allow that to constantly happen to you, then your staff is going to be totally complacent. So first off, look at yourself, because you got to be constantly fueling, alertness, all the time. I mean, whether, like Russ said, training, telling them what's happening in other facilities. I mean, it's tough too, because you could work at a facility where there's not a lot of action. Well, if there's not a lot of action, let's go ahead and get some more training in. You got to do something that keeps people alert, because anything, no, nothing's happened in this facility for 10 years. Okay, but it could still happen in the next second. So, I mean, you have to be wary of the type of facility you have too, because you could have a facility that's active. And yes, if you have intentional people that want to work and learn, the facility can, keep that person on their toes, because there's always something happening and people got to keep moving. But to avoid complacency, it's an intentional effort. So if you have a facility that doesn't move, then you got to ask yourself, what can you do to motivate staff to keep moving? And by the way, you can still get complacent people in active facilities, which is even worse. But having said that, you can't expect the facility to do the work for you either. So you have to go out there, be intentional, keep your staff alert, and just don't allow the facility to go back to where it wants to go. Because I'm telling you that right now, there is a default. The default is always going to be, if you allow it to happen, complacency and just, it's human behavior. So you got to keep on not letting the facility get to that point. So again, intentional effort, but check on yourself first, and if you're doing enough. But Joe, what's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, complacency is definitely the devil's playground. And, the one phrase during my career as a supervisor that always pissed me off was hearing, why did you do that? And their answer being, well, it's the way we've always done it.
Ooh.
Man, I'm here to tell you that shit would set me off. The biggest thing for complacency is keeping your staff engaged. Always play the what if game with them, not just playing the game with yourself, but play the game with them. Put them in scenarios. I used to, after we got information out, if we still had time, I would pick 2 or 3 and name them supervisor for the minute and give them a scenario and ask them how they would handle it. And then we would break it down as to why it was a good scenario, why it wasn't a good scenario. Complacency comes from lack of engagement. If you're not engaged with your folks and you don't have them engaged, you're going to have complacency. So, the biggest thing is to keep them involved, keep them engaged, give them the knowledge and the tools to do the job. And, complacency will go away on its own. But, you have to make that effort to keep them engaged.
Every day.
Every day. Yeah. I mean, and, I know I was probably a butthole for it, but, all the ones that would never answer questions, the ones that were always quiet, those were the ones I would go to first. and over time you find that, you bring them out of their shell and you start getting their mind working. And then, sooner or later, when you hit the shift brief and, they're asking you scenarios, they're giving you scenarios, they're playing the what if game. And that's how, you got them engaged.
Yeah. And I want to, okay, Russ, go ahead.
I was going to say, and if I can just, come back to that real quick, before we can do anything about complacency, we have to identify what it is. And so that's why a long time ago, I came up with a saying for it. It's like, complacency is situational awareness perceived, but not achieved. You fool yourself into believing you have this situational awareness, and it's just simply not true. And that's why complacency is so, insidious and pernicious, is that we believe that we do not have it. Right. So we end up in a situation where we fool ourselves, and that's why it can be so deadly.
Yeah, and guys, back in the day, so different corrections now, but back in the day, if your hand found its way in your pocket, I would have a supervisor that would get behind me and just pinch me right here, and you would never do it again. I know it sounds crazy, but it hurt. But he saves your life. Because listen, sometimes you need that wake up call. Sometimes you got staff, you got an inmate movement going on, 20 inmates, maximum security moving around, and you got one hand in your pocket and, fucking just chilling as if they're your friends, and they're watching when they walk through those things, guys. That's another thing, guys. Obviously it's common sense here, but they're watching you. So, and guess who's the first person they go after? Person with their hand in their pocket, So yeah, I had some bruises, but, I don't think to this day I walk around with my hand in my pockets. I think that was something that stayed with me for quite some time. And it's hard because Russ said it key before. There's the routine of it all, the monotony. So that's why you as a supervisor have to make sure that you break that routine once in a while and just kind of spice it up, like the what if game, like Russ mentioned and Joe mentioned. All right, so I got two more questions I thought was interesting. One from Run the World and one from Pipe Hitter. So Pipe Hitter said, is what we hear about what inmates do to child pedophiles an exaggeration? So I'll go first on this because I work in a treatment unit now for sex offenders. So there is a separate facility for them. Now, granted, you do got to be wary of them because some of them can be very high profile crimes, and inmates are able to see each other's paperwork as well. So I don't think it's something that an inmate is able to hide for quite some time, because people will find ways to figure out. I'll call my home and say, yo, my bunkie right now is Joe Pomponio. Can you tell me what he did? They're very curious about definitely their bunkies. Now, granted, what I have seen is, yes, I've seen some pedophiles get assaulted. And of course, the person thinks that they're a hero when they do it. But I have some people that will come up to you and say, listen, Gange, don't put me in with Joe. Joe's done some foolish things with some kids, and I'm going to have to do something about it if you put me in there. So there's two things that happen there right now. I want to go over this too. One is they're going to try to hold the officer responsible by saying, because you put me in with Joe, I beat the fuck out of him when I told you. So you can't, you got to be careful when the inmate says that. So what you're going to do is you're going to write the inmate a threatening charge, send them the lock, and then just kind of interview Joe for safety concerns. I wouldn't say it's as prevalent as it was. Is it something that you have to watch out for? Yes, because there's a reputation of it happening. But some of these pedophiles are smart. They find a job that the inmates need, like a legal liaison or something, and they utilize that skill to where the inmate serves a purpose, and the inmates don't touch them because, hey, this guy, is helping me out with my case. So again, I'm not saying it's running rampant because you'd be hearing about it all the time. But I still think it's a worry, but I think it could be a bit exaggerated. That's my opinion. Since I was calling Joe a pedophile a few minutes ago, I'll have Joe. Joe, what's your thoughts? Do you think it's exaggerated or?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's exaggerated. Like you said, they find jobs for these guys, librarians or law library, analysts that kind of help with writs and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely over exaggerated. You watch too much TV. I did the same thing before I joined the penitentiary. I was watching A&E and looking at all these supermax prisons, and I signed on to the Department of Correction. They sent me one of the oldest units in the state. 1896, wrought iron bars, bricks falling out of the walls, and so definitely don't believe everything you see and hear on TV.
Hey, real quick, Drew had the same question that the other gentleman asked before. Currently did my CBSA. How long will it take to get a response? Joe, we answered it pretty detailed. Maybe within 20 minutes of the episode, we go into detail about that procedure. But to be honest with you, it's up to the agency. It could take weeks, even though they may know the answer right away. It could take weeks. It's all dependent on where they're at in the hiring process. But yeah, but I want to get to this. Oh wait, Russ, did you answer that question about what do you think? It's an exaggeration?
Oh, yeah. A lot of these guys, for whatever reason, especially if their crime is somewhat known, they end up in some more protected units. So it is exaggerated a little bit. They usually try and find someone that they can, either bunk with or live around. And so it's, they find a way. I mean, you do hear of them, being killed every now and then, but it's the exception rather than the rule, or we would hear about it all the time. Right. Yeah. So there's an element of truth to most of the rumors that you will hear about prison, but the truth is usually a little bit more prosaic than the rumor is.
Yeah, and the funny thing before we get to Pipe Hitter's question is that because it seems to be an accepted rumor or an accepted fact, it does put us on our toes. So if there is hold on, I think we lost Russ for a second. He'll come back. If there is something that happens, we have to be very wary because we may say it doesn't happen as much, but the public believes it does. So it does put us on a bit of a liability, I guess. But I want to mention something else too. Sometimes the pedophiles will utilize that for single cells too. They'll say they'll come in. There may not be an actual threat, but they want a single cell, and they'll say, "Well, I've done a sex crime. I want to get put in PC. I want to be put in protective custody because I raped a child." And the population knows I raped the child, so I want to be put in protective custody. And you got to go back and say, well, were you threatened? Was there, because you can't just put anybody in protective custody, but they will utilize that to get into protective custody because they also have the belief that if they go into the population, they'll be killed. So what they'll do is they'll try to check in by automatically saying that, hey, I did this crime. And then you as administration, you have to think, well, he did do this crime. Maybe we should put him in. But having said that, who threatened you? What time did it happen? Inmates will write their own threat note and then send it out as if someone else wrote it because they want that cell. Yep. So sometimes they will use the reputation of, pedophiles get killed in prison to manipulate PC and then stay in there for the rest of their career or rest of their time in prison.
Absolutely, they're the most manipulative offenders in the population.
Yeah, I wanted to add that because someone had mentioned
they'll use that to their advantage every day and all day, especially to get a single cell and not have to be in with a cellmate.
Yep, and then I got Pipe Fitter's question, which I love. I know Russ is going to love this question too. I'll wait for him to come back, but maybe you want to go first, Joe, because I think he had to step out for a second. Only 3 months in as a CO, this is from Pipe Hitter. Feel like I'm always anxious when I walk into the institution. Is that normal for in senior staff?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. For the what we call the new boots that are walking in, that jittery feeling you feel is a good thing because you're aware, your senses are up, and you're aware of your surroundings. A lot of it for me when I first started was a fear of the unknown. Walking into a unit and hearing a crash gate slam shut for the first time scared the hell out of me. Going into a cell block and being locked in for 12 hours, that's kind of unnerving too. But, a lot of it has to do with your anxiety's got to do with, the fear of the unknown for the most part until you start getting comfortable with your job duties and then it becomes a part of routine, I guess you want to call it. Sometimes the senior staff get it. For me, it was always, pulling up and parking in the parking lot. And if you hear noise coming from the cell blocks, then it's a normal day. If you pull up and you can hear a pin drop in the parking lot, yeah, it made the hair stand up on my neck because, a lot of times, there was something that was fixing to go down. We didn't know what, but we knew something was fixing to go down because the culture of the unit changed for that day. So, yeah, even senior staff can have those anxiety moments too.
Yeah, and I want to answer that. Hey, Zaphiel, real quick, we said about the PC question. You have to protect who goes into protective custody. You can't just allow anybody to go in there. So, it's not ideal that you want people in there. Plus, it also costs more money. Solitary confinement does cost more. So, I'm very protective of who goes into protective custody. You got to be specific because at the end of the day, you also have to protect the inmates that are in protective custody. So I thought that was a great question by Xefio, but I want to do the pipe fitter question too. So let me just get back to it. Where is it? Where are you, pipe fitter? So I want to add that about. We know it's anxious. We know what the question is. So I want to kind of comment on Joe too. I don't share in Joe's thought. I don't think it's always a bad thing because it kind of reminds you to stay on your toes. Because remember, anxious. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown. I don't know if it has to be as aggressive by using the word fear. But having said that, hey, what's up, security guard? Having said that, I think there could be moments. But now, granted, when you're coming to work every day and you get caught in that routine, then, yeah, you're coming to work, it's not as anxious. But you can get a phone call one day that, you got to come in. We just lost B block. So, yeah, of course you're going in anxious. You don't know what's going on. So I think some of it could be situational based. But here's the key overall, though, Pipe Hitter. I think this will help you. I think it's human. You don't want to get to a point where you're paranoid, to the point where, where you're paranoid and it doesn't move you forward. But you got to ask yourself, and this is only for you, I don't know where you work, do you feel that this is a normal reaction at that moment in time? I think that's what I would look at, because there are times I could be anxious, but I would ask myself, why am I anxious? I mean, that's the question. Why am I anxious? If am I anxious because, some shit just happened down the wing and I don't know what's going to pop off next? Then yeah, of course I'm anxious, or am I anxious because I just come in and I'm anxious for the whole 8 hours? I think that's a problem. You could still keep on your toes and not be anxious. There's a level of maybe it could be balanced, but you got to watch out because that could cross into some paranoia. And at the end, you wind up never moving forward. So but I want to wait before you go, Russ. I want to mention one thing though, because I want to make sure my thoughts clear because it could sound like it's in conflict. I think there's a level of it where it could be healthy. It keeps you on your toes. But I also think there's a line, because if it gets too far and it's every day and you don't even know why you're anxious, I don't think it's healthy at that point. I think it's going to deter you from stepping up and doing. So that's why I don't think anxious is a good word. I'm looking for. Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Can I jump in here, Anthony? Okay, yeah. So there's a couple of different things that we deal with as correctional officers, and one of them is hypervigilance. Okay, so we have a level of hypervigilance that does make you anxious and
that's what I was looking for. That's
a little bit put out of sorts. The problem with hypervigilance is it's a very little use to us, right?
Yeah.
What we really truly want is we want situational awareness. I hear people all the time talking about, I got to have my, back to the wall and stuff like that. That's fine, but that's not the same thing as situational awareness. Situational awareness means you know where your resources are, you know what's about to go on, maybe, what you're going to have to do. You can see things develop. Hypervigilance just means that, you have a rock in your gut, right? And it's not ultimately helpful. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to train and guide that hypervigilance into something that's not detrimental to your health. You have to be able to, take your correctional awareness to the next level and to be able to set it aside when necessary.
Yeah. And guys, this was a very good question because, we've had this question done in the past. We've done all shows on this. Now I don't know why I couldn't get hypervigilant. I was trying to get to that, but you know what? I think it's a human emotion. So I'm not going to tell you that it's not okay to be that way, because there are times when it can't be. I mean, I get it, but I think the main question we're trying to get at here is you have to ask yourself why. Does it make sense at this moment? Because there are times when, of course, I'm anxious. What the fuck am I running to? But there are times where it's like, you know what? What am I anxious for right now? I don't understand now. I'm not more. I'm more nervous now, and I do think, as I said, because we were talking about complacency, because there's that line where people that I don't want to say, I don't like the word anxious and hyper. I don't like it because it seems so aggressive that it falls into being paranoid. And I don't want to get that thought out there, because I also want to say that there's a safety element to that too, because then you could fall into being complacent, so there's a line there. Like, I don't want to say anxious, or I don't want to say hypervigilant all the time, because I feel, as I said, it's extreme, but I still feel there's a level of, all right, listen, bear with me because I can't think of another word. But maybe there's a level of anxiety, but I know that's not the right word. But that balance is so you don't fall into complacency, Russ. I mean, I don't like the word anxiety though. But you know what I mean? There's got to be a balance that that keeps you out of falling into complacency. But I'm not feeling the word anxiety. I'm missing it. I can't think of what the word would be.
Right. I know what you're saying, but I think most people know what we mean, when we're thinking about, the things that could be happening, whether we want to call it foreboding, which is like a little bit like, foreshadowing, or whether we just want to say that we're anxious, we're uptight, we're not, we have trepidation in our hearts. I don't have my thesaurus with me right now, but I can say that, those things can ultimately be detrimental, in a mental health type of way, just in the fact that we're not dealing with it effectively, and we're going outside the bounds of what's normal, and I think you do have to kind of check yourself and say, okay, am I on my toes because something's going on, or I have an idea something might go on, or am I just, stressing out,
Yeah, I like what Anthony says, like just enough to keep safe without being upset. Yeah, I think people are getting the thought. I just thought anxiety. Hey, I want to get to Amanda's question. Thanks, guys, for kind of bearing with me as I thought about that, because I didn't like the word anxiety. But so she wanted to add a little more information to the inmate escape in Philadelphia. My question is, at what point does a higher authority step in? Who should be responsible? Okay, so I'll go first on this, because so across the country, we're dealing with understaffing. And then she even mentions it here. There are 4 county facilities in Philadelphia. The escape was at a facility 260 officers short. The 4 facilities are short 800 officers and have been since COVID. So first off, understaffing is a big concern right now, which goes outside of just external incentives of giving people raises. Because to be honest with you, money's a big part of it, to get people in, but it's not enough to retain them some of the times. I'm going to be honest with you, because with the shit that's happening in these prisons and stuff like that, people start to say, well, this isn't even worth it, no matter what I was getting paid. So yes, I mean, you want to invite people in, and yes, people look at external incentives, but eventually there has to be a level to retain. So I think here's what happens here. I think that when you're down so many staff, the facilities are going to do Band-Aid things where they're going to maybe merge 3 shifts into 2, try to balance 12-hour shifts. Again, it's a Band-Aid, because you still got to address the numbers that are dwindling out. So yeah, you may for a while be able to merge 3 shifts into 2, but the biggest concern at that point though is you're still bleeding out. You're still bleeding. It's just a little bit longer now it's going to take, but it's still happening. Once you show the exhausted effort for staffing, you're going to see like what they do in other states. They got to call the honor guard, or they got to get outside assistance from the government, because the problem is that you have nowhere to go now. You have nowhere to go because you've already merged all your manpower, or all your workforce into 2 shifts. I mean, you're not going to have people working 24, but I can have them working 12 to 16. And maybe even in the 12-hour shift, you have like a 12-hour overlap to protect people from getting mandated to do it a 24. But With that said, the short-term thinking or the downstream thinking is, yes, as I said, merge 3 to 2. But in the process, the upstream thinking is, okay, well, I got to invite new, and I got to keep people from retiring, keep people from resigning or leaving. And another answer that people do, which is really I'm not a big fan of, is bringing people back from retirement. I mean, that's a whole nother issue. But with that said, so I think at that point, the efforts have to be made in focusing a good amount of money, yes, towards incentives to bring people in, but a real good amount of money towards retention, because you don't want new people coming in and senior people leaving. There's got to be a balance. So, I always talk about it like this. Cable companies, they screw the people that are loyal and hook up people that are new. And it's like, well, I'm not loyal. You're not giving me anything, So I think there has to be a balanced effort. But I also want to mention something else too. Peer-to-peer wise, we also could do more about promoting the profession. It's tough now. I get it. It's hard to find the positive, but there is positive. But having said that, it doesn't help the profession when we're out there and we're talking shit about it too, and then complaining why nobody wants to join the profession. It's like, well, last time you were out there, what did you say? So we are going through a lot of stuff right now, but I think that what we should do is realistically, yes, but, try to get people to see the positive so we could bring people in as well. I think the biggest help that we could get is not always going to be dependent on the money that people is going to make, but rather be on what we could even provide here on this platform. Give people a realistic sense of optimism that, and it's realistic that this is a great profession and this is where we could strive to be, but we have to get through the rocky road. But there's really no fit answer. And because a lot of these facilities are in survival mode, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to merge the shifts. And if you're already at that position where you're running on 2 shifts, the next step is going to be retirement people, national. I mean, what are you going to do? You're exhausted, and by the way, prior to all that, you've already cut post, you've aligned all your posts. So I mean, prior to all that, you're running on the posts that only need to be covered. So you're already low before you start bringing the shifts together. And then there's nothing else you could do at that point. It sucks. There's no answer to that. It's a tough situation because, as I said, even extrinsically, you may get some people to come, but they're not going to be the best either. Look at their motivation for coming in. They're money hungry. When shit hits the fan, they'll be the first people to go. It's just not enough. Let me tell you something. One last thing. When people are motivated by money and they get hit with a fucking challenge, they'll be the first ones to say, yeah, this is not worth the money I'm making. But then the people that are loyal, the people that aren't in there for the money, they're running. They're running to the code. They're solving the problems. And the people that can't. So I don't know. I know we need the money because on the surface, that's what people want. So of course we need it. I'm not saying that. But I don't always think that invites the right people either. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So Russ, you want to answer some of that too? Because there was a lot there in that question. Do you know it or no?
Yeah. Well, can I see the question real quick?
Yeah. It's from Amanda. And it was a great question. Let me just find it because as here it goes. Here's the first part.
Now I'm going to have to ask you to read it to me because my eyes are no good.
Oh yeah, that's fine. You're over 50, right? You said. Hey guys, I have bad.
Do you know how old I'm going to be?
No, don't say it, Russ, because there's a lot of people that still think you're 21.
He quit getting it.
Russ looks good for his age. Russ, how old are you, Russ?
This August I will be 60.
Oh, Joe, how old are you, Joe?
51.
Oh my God.
Russ quit getting the AARP letters 20 years ago.
Oh my. All right, so I wanted to add a little more information to the inmate escape in Philadelphia. My question is, at what point does a higher authority step in and who should be responsible?
Okay. So when we're talking about are we being given the tools that we need to stop escapes, namely, are we fresh enough out of the blocks to be able to make sure that we're, not skimping on all of our counts and things like that? Are we out there looking for contraband that they're going to use in the midst of an escape? What about contraband that they're going to use to maybe finance an escape? Like drugs and things like that. It's an interesting issue because shit floats downhill, and so the ones that are going to primarily be blamed in this case are going to be the officers. I think that I don't think we really know yet how much they are to blame, but this is the point at which you get to where the rubber meets the road, and somebody needs to step up and say, "Hey, these officers, they were overworked. What is their level of culpability? It can't be zero, can it? I don't think that their culpability is zero, but are they 100% at fault? No, they're probably not 100% at fault either. Somebody should have been doing better training with these officers. Somebody should have been supplying more people into that chain of command and the span of control, so that we have enough bodies to run all of these units and detect the things that we need to detect to keep the public safe. So I think it's a darn shame that somebody's probably going to get axed that maybe deserves a second chance based on the fact that they were overworked and destroyed, and they probably even thought that, hey, this is normal, and it's not.
It's interesting. Yeah, but Russ, it's interesting. I'm actually have a question. So it's interesting. So you said that you got so for the understaffing, you said you would look at the officers first.
No, I'm saying no. What I'm saying is they're gonna get looked at first.
No, that's what I mean.
They're gonna get thrown under the bus no matter what. Now.
So right. So here's my thing. So I want to partner on that for when Joe comes in, because so there are crazy times right now, right? And there's only so much management can do, like especially during the management of COVID. It was hard. That shit was not easy, right? So I think that caused a lot of pressure, and it made people wonder, like, is this all worth this? I'm not being able to go home, not be able to see my family. I'm getting mandated. So I mean, you can't blame management on that, because management job is to keep the facility running. But they also have to be wary that there's a human element. So, I mean, management maybe could lock things down to see if we can get people home and run things on bare minimum. But you also have the inmates you got to worry about, because you can't lock them down forever, because, when you finally open up, you got a war zone going on. So, I mean, it's very hard to find the balance. But my question really is, when we ask people, why are they leaving? It's too tough. I can't work here. Well, okay, well then maybe I don't need you then. I mean, but if you're leaving because of bad management, then get rid of the management. At this point, I would do that. If I found out that my facility's hurting and I got bad management at a time like this, where we're looking for a different style of leadership in today's world because of the people that are coming in. I mean, generational diversity. I mean, you got leaders right now that, times are changing. They want leaders that are a little bit more authentic, and staff want to have purpose and value. Now, these new boots want to have a say a little bit in where their career is going. So if you got a leader that's, very aggressive in their ways and just pushing people out, you got to be wary of that too, because times are changing, and the people that we're bringing into this profession, it's sad to say, guys, but you have to bear with me. It's just where we're at. They may not be the best candidates, but we do need, I don't even want to say you do need numbers, because I'd rather have qualified people, but for the people that are coming in right now, and we're at the point where we need numbers, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but some of the people that are coming in now need to be handheld throughout the process. Remember back in the day, you went out to the academy, no one fucking handhelded you. You got to just do it and survive. At this point, they need numbers that they're going to hold people's hands and get them through. And, there's no one failing now. And the sad thing is it's both a good and bad thing. Because here's another thing, though. You got people that are saying we're understaffed. I'm getting mandated, 7 days a week. We got to do more. And the department, out of desperation, wanting to protect their people from getting mandated, may say, guys, we got to broaden up the hiring. We're not getting people to want to come in. I don't have the money right now. No one's giving me the money. So let's just open it up. Now we start getting people that aren't the best for the job. And then you get the same people that are making the complaint that they're getting mandated too much, that, you're hiring people that's not qualified. It's like, I know, I get it, but my objective now, sad to say, is I'm in desperation mode. I want to get you home, and it's crazy because the people that have to make the decision on this, especially when we don't have that it's incentive, is you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because no matter which way you go, you can't win. It's like sometimes when maybe in a case with a union where you have a concern and you represent the workforce, and you help the union with the workforce, and you're doing the right thing, and then you get an individualized member who the union's representing who wants something totally different, and then you got to kind of tell the union, you got to pick a side here, because I have no way to do both. So you got to pick a side. So same thing here. It's like, well, we need more staffing. Damn it, we need more staffing. What can we do? I can't get the money right now, so I got to hire. Let's get people in, guys, because I got officers that are burnt out, man. They haven't been with their families. Let's just get people in. And the moment you get people in, they're not the most qualified. It sucks, but we're trying to get people in to fill the gap. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, you're bringing people in that can't do the job. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? My priority at that point was to get you out, to get you to go home. So we swallowed some of the things that we would utilize to bring people in. But I want you to know the motivation wasn't to put you next to someone that couldn't do the job. The motivation was, damn, Joe's worked 5 doubles in a row. Joe is not able to do the job at this position, but Joe should be spending time with his family. So it's not easy, man. I want to just mention it so people can get the understanding from both perspectives. It's not an easy decision to make when people just think that they got to make more money. Yeah, but what about the people that can't control that are the ones that are making the decisions? So I can't control to get you more money, but I have to make the decision of what I can do to get you guys home. That's hard, man. Joe, what's your thoughts? Because there's a lot there, man. There is.
Yeah, we got to look at the times that we're in now. When I started, there was still, for the most part, there was still a parent at home raising you while one parent was working. You got a lot of single parents bringing up kids now due to failed marriages. We're recruiting kids straight out of high school that's never had any kind of job experience, let alone prison experience. And we're taking somebody straight out of high school and putting them in the prison profession and expecting them to have the same level of morals and integrity that a 20-year vet does. And it's not going to happen. We got kids watching kids.
Yeah.
Historically nationwide, we are short-staffed all the way around. Texas is such in a horrible state, and it breaks my heart because I still have my officers and my sergeants that call me. And the facility I retired from has had 5 homicides since January. And, and 3 months prior to that, they had a staff member with the rank of captain who went up in an exterior picket and blew his brains out. Swallowed a gun right there in front of another employee. Times are tough. I attribute it to a lot of things. Here they have hired a director that they're paying good money for recruiting, instead of finding ways to retain them. And that's the biggest problem. We hire 80, we lose 120. Retention is a big issue. A lot of it's attributed to bad management, which I could talk all day. That was one of the reasons why I retired. When you got somebody who's, the rank of captain or major or above that has, 20 years less experience in the system and no leadership capabilities, these are the type of people that they're hiring. And that's the reason why people are leaving, because the employees aren't valued. They're not being treated fairly. They're working the dog shit out of them. These officers are required to work 16-hour days on their 4 days on, and they're required to give up 2 of their 4 off days and work 16. And it is turned into a vicious cycle that nobody can seem to break. And they know that there's bad management out there, but yet they don't want to do nothing about the bad management. So instead of dealing with the one bad manager, they're willing to let 30, 40 employees go. It's right. Bad. It's turned into such a vicious cycle. 20 years ago, we had a family atmosphere. We cared for each other. We looked out for each other. We all walked out the gate together. We came in together. We fought crash gate to crash gate together, and we still came to work the next day, bumped up, lumped up, and bruised. But we were there because we had a sense of loyalty to our teammates, and that loyalty is not there anymore. And that's one of the big problems. I wish somebody had a magic pill to cure what's going on, because God knows if they had it prior to me retiring, I probably wouldn't have retired. I'd probably still be there. But, the fact of the matter is, a lot of things are contributing to the short staffing, bad management, the promotional qualities and the promotional process, needs to be revamped. We're hiring kids to watch kids instead of going to army posts and recruiting soldiers that are getting out, that are on terminal leave, with experience, of integrity and all your principal values. There's just a lot of things that it took years for us to get to this state. And sadly, I think it's going to take years to get us out of this state.
Well, you know what? I want to mention something too. I mean, when we had COVID, obviously it was very rough, and it was a lot for people to deal with. And then people were like, yo, why am I even dealing with this? But there were some that would say, I can't leave because me and Joe are boys, or this is my family here. And again, we didn't have much of that. But during those tough times, the people that stayed, it really did test that relationship, and not just so much the relationship to the job, because I think at that point, it's the relationship to each other. Because you see people, you're right, there is a family behind the wall sometimes, and they'll stick together because, hey, let's get Joe home today, and then tomorrow we'll get Gangi home, and they just stick together and try to find some consistency amongst each other, that they can have some level of control. So I mean, yeah, you get why people are leaving, but at that point it's like, wow, there's also people that stayed, and I don't know how to feel about that, because the people that left, it's like, I get it. You got to take care of your family. So I can't argue that. But then you got the people that stayed because there was a level of, I don't know, they felt responsibility towards each other. So, I mean, it's really where you feel the sacrifice is going to be. I mean, that's for me, is where do you feel the greatest sacrifice is? I mean, my family, I went through it. I had COVID 5 times. I mean, it got to a point where my wife understood the times we were going through, and it made it less worrisome for me to have to make the decisions, because she supported me, because she knew that, I didn't choose this, but it is my profession. And, at this point, this is the tough time that we have to go through. I also want to mention something too, just to go back on the management perspective. When you're going through rough times and people are leaving, I really do think that there could be some management thinking like, yo, my priority right now, it may not be so much running the facility as it is to get Joe home or to get staff home. So what can I do to get my numbers to where it needs to be so I can, send my staff home who's been working 4 or 5 days? What are some of the policies that we can change? What are some of the posts that we can cut back on? And again, these are impossible decisions. These are impossible decisions where in the end there's going to be a loss, because you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. So do you want to be Peter today, or do you want to be Paul? You're going to have to make the choice. One day you're Peter, one day you're Paul. And that's a shitty way to have to go through this profession, but there's no other way. And for management, it has to make the decision, and for frontline to hopefully see the effort and not the outcome. I mean, that would be great. But they would have to know that it's not easy for management. And then you get management that says, if my guys or my workforce is, they're getting hit, I'm going to stay around and I'm going to work alongside them. And that's awesome. That's noble, and that builds good morale. But I will say one thing. It's tough to motivate people during these times because there is inconsistency in a life because you don't know if you're going to go home or not. And it's tough to, preach passion and purpose into people who are burnt out. They just don't have the time to hear that shit. They don't. So management really doesn't have a lot of tools to motivate because I don't have anything intrinsic. I can't give you more money. I don't have control of that. So all I do is if I was management, my thing would be is that, and it could sound superficial because there's nothing else I could do, is just kind of show specific appreciation for, them staying, the importance behind them staying at work, or maybe once in a while, if you're, whatever it is, have a family day if possible, where you can let the family understand the sacrifices that are being made. Because I think the biggest pressure here, or the biggest fear from people that are going through this is also, my family. My family wants me home. They don't understand what I'm going through. And that adds to the pressure. Now, for me, as I said, when my family knew what I was going through, it alleviated a lot of the pressure. And I was able to kind of reinvest myself. I did not feel guilty for not going home. Yes, I was tired, but I didn't have the added sense of guilt. So I guess this would more go towards the family and saying that, it sucks your husband has to work 4 or 5 days, or your wife has to work 4 or 5 days. Or your mom has to work 4 or 5 days. But what we could do as a family unit, so we can get through these times, so we can motivate people to come to work, so people could leave. I mean, that's key too, right? We want our peers to come in so we could leave. I get the burnout, but maybe we could motivate the families to understand what's happening so we can alleviate the sense of guilt that most people are feeling because they're getting hit, but they don't have control in being able to say no. I think that could help. It's not a catch-all, but it adds to something. I mean, I would love the fact that my family knows I'm here, so let me just get my mind right, because that's one less worry, and just keep moving. But it's not. There's no answer to this, guys, right now. I wish there was, and I'd be bullshitting you if I knew an answer. I'm just trying to help us through the process.
And for all the single parents that are in this profession, that are doing this on their own, raising kids, my heart goes to you, because I'm telling you, I know you guys are wearing all your options out. Daycares are only open for 8 hours a day, and when you're working 16, man, you're wearing out your family members, and having them watch kids and robbing Peter to pay Paul, and all the chaos that's going on in your personal lives because you found that way to come to work. I salute you guys more than you know.
Yeah, and that's wonderfully said, Joe, because it's true. I want people to know we understand it, but having said that, I don't know. So it's very scary and sad situation for management, for the officers that had 30 plus deaths in the last 2 years. How do we fix it? So the problem is so here's another thing, guys. This may be our last question because it's going to be a little bit here, but hear me out, guys, on this. So this is a long-term fix that in the meantime requires immediate solutions because you got to keep things running while you're making the effort to see what's happening long-term. But ultimately, you're still bleeding. And I don't want people to become complacent in the short-term fix or the short-term solution, because technically it's just a Band-Aid. It's not meant to be there long-term. But to be honest with you, there's another problem. The people in the higher positions aren't in long-term. So all they care about is the moment, because they're not going to be in there for the next moment. So for them, a short-term fix is a permanent fix. For management, for the officers that 30 plus deaths, how do we fix it? I think the question right now, to be honest with you, is how do we make it through it? Because there is no there. I mean, to be honest with you, even for a fix like this, it's about motivating people who you just can't motivate during these times. I mean, you can go back, revamp leadership, change them around, but you know, it's partly leadership to some extent, depending on what facility, but it's also not leadership. I mean, here's what I would do. Here's what I would think. I mean, you got to identify what the problem is. Is the problem in your control? Let's do it this way. Is the problem not in your control? Right. So if the problem is a bad leader because the working environment is shit, and you could prove it's a bad leader because maybe the leader's like a 3 on a scale to 10 and you're losing tens, that's a bad leader. That's a bad leader. But if my leader's a 10 and I'm losing 3s, that's not a bad leader. That's just lazy people leaving. So you got to kind of identify what's in your control. So bad leader, 100%. During these times, we don't even got a second to tolerate a leader who doesn't have people management skills and the effort always to be productive. I mean, yes, you want to build relationships, but you want to build relationships to be productive for the agency that you work for. So you're not building relationships as an end. You're building a relationship to be productive. If you got a leader that cannot do that and cannot motivate the workforce, then they got to go. There's no ifs and buts about it, especially during these times, because even retraining still may not help with that person's reputation that they have now established. And again, it depends on how severe they are as a bad leader. But if it's situational, things that are not in your control, the only thing I could, and it's going to be superficial. This is really superficial, but it's how you look at the situations you're facing. Are you going to make an intentional effort to find something positive and let's make it through, or because there's no answer, guys? And if there's no answer, then you have to look back at yourself and how you deal with the situation, because there is no answer. I'm not going to sell you a bridge here. There's no answer for Amanda's problem. I mean, she's 100% correct, but there's no answer to that. So the only thing I can tell you, just to maybe keep you motivated, is can we look at the problem differently? With maybe some level of optimism or something that keeps us moving forward. Because the moment you feel trapped and the moment you feel it cannot be fixed, you leave. I mean, that's it. There's no, I'm trapped. I don't want to be trapped. I leave. So maybe there's a way that you could switch how you look at the problem, where you can provide value into it. Because I'm going to tell you something, and for people that don't think it's realistic, heroes look at a problem and step up. And that's where they get remembered for. They don't get remembered because when the times are challenging, they leave. Those are the ones that are in it to win it. Because now it's challenging and I'm still here. And I think as management, you reward the fuck out of those guys. You do what you can to keep those people going, because they're your long-termers, and they didn't leave the first time that there was a challenge, So I think, to be honest with you, I would ask myself during these challenging times, what could I do to step up and motivate? Because there's really no, I mean, what's your thoughts, Joe? I mean, there's no quick fix to that, Joe.
No, there's no quick fix. It comes to a point where you either have to ask for help from the outside, kind of like the ACA process. They send auditors from county, state, federal facilities from all over the state to come look at your facility. They're a fresh set of eyes looking at your policies and procedures and reviews. Sometimes an outside set of eyes may help the situation. They can offer suggestions that, you haven't thought of. One of the biggest things is, in conjunction with Amanda's question, is you got to look at the culture of your unit. Why is it that way? We need to identify problems. When you have a ton of people leaving, I think it's the executive leadership's responsibility and moral compass to look at the exit interviews and take them to heart.
Yeah.
Instead of just putting another piece of paper in a folder of an outgoing employee, fuck it, just put it in a file and drive on. That's kind of what's led us to here, because they're not listening. They don't want to listen. Sometimes they're just as happy to have their heads in the sands than try to identify the problem, whether it's bad leadership, whether it's a contraband interdiction issue, dirty staff, whatever the case may be. They need to either sit down and take a cold, hard look at the culture of the facility, identify the problems. Why are we losing this amount of staff? If it's a management issue, it needs to be dealt with. Just like you said, if we're losing tens at the results of threes, then we have a problem.
I agree.
There's no easy fix. Like I said, it took us years to get to this point because we spent years not dealing with issues that we should have dealt with. And here we are. This is the result. We're short-staffed nationwide because we refuse to deal with sometimes the single. Instead of dealing with the single, we lose the triples. And you're right. At this point, there's no easy answer. There's no quick fix.
Even if we had more management defending the profession on national TV instead of cowering down to the politics on the outside of things, that because again, people have a perspective of this profession that's shit.
And that's exactly it, because all we see in the media is the negativity. We see the negative outcomes to a positive profession. And like I said, the facility I retired from in general, just as an example, 5 homicides and an employee suicide within 7 months.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying what the fuck is going on here. What makes it worse is that the officers are the ones that are suffering for it, because the management is got their foot on their neck to get the job done, but you got one person running 6 pods instead of one person running 1 pod. We're working the shit out of them instead of dealing with the issues. And and that's what kills me about the whole situation. There's no reason why you should have that many ODs, that many homicides, that many suicides in a short time span, and somebody from the executive leadership hasn't stepped onto that unit and started interviewing officers. Nobody's called up the exiting officers or management, for that matter, me included. I walked out in the middle of my shift and retired, and I never got one phone call to ask why. And that's the problem. We quit giving a shit. Yeah. 20 years ago, we were a family atmosphere, and we knew when somebody was having an off moment, and you pulled them in and you said, "Hey, what the hell's going on with you?" I got some personal shit at the house, me and the wife aren't getting along, whatever the case may be. But we identified the problem, and we're not doing that anymore. And that's why we're in the shape that we're in now.
Yeah, I think I agree, guys. As I said, it's a great question that was asked by Heather. It's just not something that's easily answered, because to be honest with you, even the solutions are temporary, because this corrections has taken loss after loss after loss, including people's perspective of anything positive, and then we feel defeated. We translate that to people who may want to come in, but we're just like, we'll be the first, no one wants to come in this profession, and then we get a chance to talk about it. Like, why would you want to be in this profession? It's like, hey guys, you can't do that. You can't sit there and play both sides, and at the end of the day, we're not moving forward in any direction. Heather says, I know there's no real answer on fix. I appreciate everything you guys said. I'm an intelligent analyst for a county facility, so I could talk about cause and effect scenarios for hours. Well,
and that's perfect. And that's perfectly said. Cause and effect.
Thank you for what you do.
That sums the whole situation up right there in one sentence: cause and effect.
Right. But you know what's funny though in that though? Can I add something? By the way, Amanda, thank you for what you do, because that matters to us too. Because cause and effect, understand it, be preventive. You know what's funny, guys? Cause and effect, same thing as stimulus and reaction, but in the middle. Colby would say is our choice. That's where we have our freedom to choose. I think unfortunately right now, a lot of us, we get hit with something and we automatically say, it's not enough. I'm sorry, it's not enough to stay here. I'm out. I'm gone. And then I think when you tend to leave, I don't want to say it's weird because it really depends on what you're leaving for. Because don't forget, you got people that are not being able to spend time with their family. So it's not a selfish reason why they're leaving. It's they got a family that hasn't seen them. So I can't harp on them. But, there are some that are just like, this is too much of bullshit. And, so again, I think, to be honest with you, I don't see this problem ending anytime soon because there's so many variables, guys. I mean, there's the challenging time now, how we perceive the job, how we feel about the job. I know I said perceive how we see it, but also how we feel about it, which matters probably more. How we translate the job to others. I've been at events where you got a guy working in corrections shitting on the whole profession, and then you're like, hey, wait a second, but haven't you worked here for 20 years? At the end of the day, what do you say about yourself? And the person goes, well, to keep a healthy mindset, I'm not connected to this profession because I'm trying to keep myself healthy. I said, yeah, but you know what? I got to argue that too. I wrote an article that just got published in the American Jail Association about this. It's in the May release. I said, if you don't feel connected, then you're not committed. And if I was your partner and I'm working next to you and you told me you weren't connected, I would question your commitment. I would, because I'm not asking you to be connected to the profession, but be connected to me. Because at the end of the day, I need you to save me. You need me to save you. So that would bother me because I think no matter how hard or whatever, that healthy, can't stay connected, guys, you're always going to identify with what you do. And the way to keep that healthy connection going with the profession like corrections is to be intentional in how you perceive that connection. Like I could be passive and say, yeah, I don't want to stay connected to this miserable profession because of blah, 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 and I don't want to be miserable. That's passive. And yes, you stay that way, it's going to destroy you. But if you're intentional and you find the value, the task significance, the importance behind the work, and really seek to find the positive amongst the chaos of it all, which people do, then there is a healthy connection. Because if I stood during these challenging times, because I did, after we survived COVID, I was quick to tell people, hey guys, I did this shit for 3 years, man. I stood tall on that connection because I was proud of myself. So I think that the problem is that people are also afraid to also get too connected. I think that's a concern too. And I think that translates when there's a chance to sell the profession and they just keep themselves distant from it. And the person that could maybe buy into it's like, yeah, well, hey, I just found out from Joe who works in corrections that it's a shitty profession. I don't care if Joe's disgruntled or not because I don't know nothing about the profession. So what Joe tells me got to be truth, So at the end of the day, the people that would want to come in, but then you get other people that follow. And this is another thing, guys, people that follow this channel, we do highlight a positive perspective when you enter our world because would like to see you enter into a world that's embraced. I believe, I know it's tough for corrections to do this, but I believe that mistrust is earned. At some point, we do have to trust each other behind that wall, and it's hard for us because we're cynical. But with that said, good night, Aunt. But with that said, we have to embrace the new people coming in. And what breaks my heart is when you get new people coming in, believing that there is this family atmosphere because we're selling it, and then they're shunned. So I also think how we welcome people into the profession matters. It's like, well, I don't know them. I can't trust them. Yeah, but you're pushing them away, and now they can't trust you. It goes both ways. A rookie coming in the profession better be able to trust you as a senior. Better be able to trust you. So now the excuse not to communicate with the person is because, well, guess what? I can't trust them. I don't know them. Yeah, but you're not. It's not about the trust. You're just guy's a piece of shit. You're not talking to him. You're not doing nothing. What's going on? I mean, now the guy comes in thinking that he's going to belong to this family. You shunned him. Who picks him up? The inmates, automatically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I get we're cynical by nature, and you got to be careful who you trust, but don't confuse that as a reason to treat people like shit that are coming into this profession. That's why I live by the rule that just mistrust is earned. Mistrust is earned because at the end of the day, you walk around. I'm not saying to be foolishly trusting, But you can't just use that as an excuse to tell everybody to fuck off. And then when people ask you, hey, you never said anything to this guy. He's been here 5 years. What's up? I can't trust him. How do you know? Well, he's too new. 5 years is still too much time. 10 years, still too much time. I think you need to make the effort, be more proactive with those rookies. And if anything, I know a lot of us may say they have to earn the trust to us. I look at it the other way. I think when they're coming in this profession, they're vulnerable. We need to earn their trust. And that's not going to be a popular answer. Hey, do you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I mean, thank everybody for the questions, man. You guys put up some damn good questions tonight. And I've enjoyed them all. For the leaders that are out there that are watching, invest in your staff, because you're the ones that are setting the tone and keeping your shifts functional. And you got to stay engaged with these people, young and old, new and veteran. Even your veterans get complacent. So, I mean, you got to keep everybody engaged. I wish there was a magic pill to fix all the short staffing. And I know it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen quick. It's going to take time. But you guys fighting the fight. For you guys that are continuing, especially in Texas, guys, I say it every year during the Correctional Peace Officers Week. You guys are the backbone of the facility. I know you guys are getting drove. I know you guys are working your asses off. I know you guys are working short. And, as always, man, even though I was a lieutenant, once a CO, always a CO. And my hat goes off to you. Keep fighting that fight. Be safe as you can, and watch each other's back.
Great words, Joe. I want to add something too, because Dante said I learned a lot from he called it a conference. Of course, Eric's making jokes. Eric's a good friend of mine. I know Eric for many years. I like what he said here. I made mental notes of all the senior staff who treated me like shit and told them about themselves later on when they wanted to be friendly. That's pretty cool. Should have thought of that. I may take that as my own, Eric. Sorry. But hey, I want to mention something. The questions that are asked here also make us learn, because besides the intelligence behind the question, it causes us to think in the moment. I mean, as you can tell, as we're doing the dialogue, we're trying to formulate it. So we're trying to figure out the answer, really pulling onto our experience and making sure that we say things that are consistent and flow. So the questions that you ask bring out the best in our answers, because some of the questions we had today, and I got over 1,300 something videos, were unique, stuff that we never answered before. And I find that I also learn at the end of each episode. So keep educating us as well, because you guys definitely had some very good questions today. And I'm hoping as we do more of these, we still continue to get your participation. And I would love to see the people that are going to start coming from the other side. I just like to grow. The people that have family members that are locked up, I'm curious to see what type of questions they would ask that we as a community can help. I'm curious to see where we get to share with our expectations of what we expect from the inmate population. And I'm very curious to see what they think we do behind the wall. Let's see if Traveling Teresa comes. I would love to answer her questions and end it on this. Will do, Joe. And thank you. It means a lot. Gangi, main topic was motivate. Yes, I owe you one, Dante. You made me get my thought off. I learned that thing a couple of days ago, but I identified motivation. So you gave me a chance to plug in some new knowledge. And Dante, I'm going to end on this, guys. So before I say goodbye, make sure you subscribe. Please like, blah, blah, blah. Dante's going to get the last statement of the day. I'm refreshed and motivated. On that note, we're gone. See you later, guys. Love you guys. Stay safe.